So we're about to conclude our institutional change track. Institutional change, civic innovation, social justice is the focus of this warning, and someone who has dedicated a lot of time, energy, resources to trying to create change for good in the world. Our next speaker or our next guest, we know through his incredible political efforts, his incredible career before that, Andrew Yang. So many of us first heard about you through your political campaigns. You had a long career as a successful entrepreneur before that. You tried to create change in that position before moving into politics. And then, that's such a, to make a foray into the political space, especially in today's environment that's so polarized, where if you say the wrong thing or if you even align with the wrong person, all of a sudden, half the country doesn't even want to listen to. First, I'd just love to ask, what's the biggest lesson you've learned through that transition and that journey?
Thank you, Elliott. I've been to Iowa 25 times, New Hampshire, same number. They're like kids where you have to do something for one, you have to do something for the other. And when you spend time with Americans in real life, they are congenial, gracious, open-minded. It's only when it gets refracted through our current media landscape and social media landscape do you lose the humanity. And, I tell jokes where it's like, if you're the magical Asian man from the future who wants to give everyone money, then who show up in the farmlands of Iowa, and they size you up and they think to themselves, okay, what's this person doing here? And when they realize you're there to help, they actually, you can almost see this, a veil lifts. I think being in person helps. I think it's one reason why being in an environment like this is so joyful and important. But it's really that our institutions are failing us and our leaders are being held captive to incentives that are bringing out not the best in folks, but the worst.
And so you've done some work, and one of the things first, one of the things most fundamentally I appreciate about what I got to see as an observer of your kind of public political efforts so far has been just a really balanced, measured, kind approach, as opposed to jumping into the vitriol and polarization. So I just want to first applaud that. But the other piece is you have very specific suggestions. You have very specific ideas of how we can improve our institutions. Most notably, perhaps from your presidential campaign, UBI, Universal Basic Income, which, such a dream for so many, and would change the system. And even just talking about that before we get into some of the new ideas you've introduced, like ranked choice voting, I want to hear about how you see these things actually being implemented, given that our institutions are so rigid and the incentives are working the way they are, we'll say.
Oh, well, thanks, Elliot. This is near and dear to my heart. So 4 years ago, I ran on something called artificial intelligence arriving, and it was going to get rid of a lot of jobs. More true today than it was even then. I mean, the type of jobs may be a little bit different than I thought. I was there trying to warn the truck drivers that eventually their trucks were going to drive themselves. But instead, it's going to be a lot of designers and artists and white-collar workers who do one of the 44% of jobs that are either repetitive, cognitive, or repetitive manual. So it's here, it's coming. I think that something like a universal basic income would be vital to help us manage this transition. And a lot of the last 5 years of my life has been trying to make that happen. So when I ran for president last cycle, I had this naive thought that if most of us want something, we will get that thing. And that's totally wrong. I have a data point for you where when I started running, about 23% of people wanted universal basic income with a freedom dividend or something along those lines. And then fast forward to today and something like 68%. So then you'd say, okay, well, 68%, maybe you get it, right? It's like, no. It turns out that 80% of us want I mean, 80% of us want money out of politics, or 85% of us want anti-gerrymandering. It's like you don't get those things, and so we realized, okay, what is the barrier between what we want and what we get? And it turns out that the barrier is, if you had to summarize it in 3 words, is the two-party system. And so then I said, okay, like how can we change the two-party system, which is obviously a very ambitious undertaking, but I'm a cool guy. So it's like, okay, like how do you do this? Now, I will say I'm a pragmatic operator, so that while I sit before you, the co-founder and co-chair of the 3rd biggest political party in the country by resources right now, Forward Party, which is not saying a whole lot because there's a very, very steep drop-off between number 2 and number 3. What happens is we pass the Greens. I'm a better fundraiser than whoever the Greens have. So we're growing, but simultaneously, I've now spent $10 million of Jack Dorsey's money lobbying for anti-poverty measures in DC, like the enhanced child tax credit revival. By the way, we cut in half child poverty in the United States of America in 2021. Best thing we've done, and the fact that I like had at least some input into that was my proudest accomplishment. And the reason why we don't really have much to celebrate is that we undid that accomplishment a year later in 2022 because of the infinite wisdom of the American political system. And you can look this up. Child poverty in the United States of America, 11% went down to 5.5%, back to 11% now. So we know we can do it. We actually did it for 15 months. And that to me is a summation of the problem with the two-party system, is that you can deliver for people, you can take it away, and there's no real feedback mechanism, like there's no hue and cry. And so Forward right now is trying to change things. And by the way, I can, if you guys are interested, I can go through the operations as to how you actually can change the dynamic from the two-party system without federal legislation, without anything else, because I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I'm now one of the foremost experts on how you actually can chisel away at this political system.
Yeah, I would love to hear, and I know somehow. Well done, Andrew.
Should be real.
So I suspect you're pointing towards ranked choice voting as one of these mechanisms.
Yeah, so what you want to do is you want to try and open up the voting system, and the primaries in particular. So what is the approval rating for Congress as we're here together this fine day? 15%. It's quite low. What is the re-election rate for incumbent members? 94%. Yeah, so my joke is, how would you feel if you were a customer at a business and 4 out of 5 of you were unhappy, and then the business changed absolutely nothing and did that every cycle? That's the way that's the way most Americans feel about our political system now. So number one is we're held hostage by a primary system that is distorting our politics in various ways. And believe it or not, there are 6 states that are voting this November, less than 2 months from now, about getting rid of their primary system and making it so that anyone can vote for anyone. And that's going to cost various philanthropists, some of whom I'm friends with, $75 million to take a shot at those 6 states. They're actually trying to get to 90 million. So a lot of everything I'm talking about is about resources. So one way you can make it so a third party can compete is you make it so anyone can vote for anyone, and then that weakens the control that the 2 parties have. The other opportunities are the 500,000 or so local officials around the country. Tens of thousands of them are technically nonpartisan right now. So the mayor of Fort Collins, Colorado, Jenny Arn, raised her hand and said, "I will now join the Forward Party." Her constituents said to her, "What the heck does that mean? We've never heard of the Forward Party." And then she said, "What it means is I answer to you and no one else." They said, "Oh, okay, it's not that bad." And then the mayor of the next town over, Colorado, said, "I want to do that too." So we now have 40 elected officials around the country who've said, "I'm now like a Forward Party member." You can get to 400 or 4,000 changing nothing just by recruiting folks who are in positions that are technically nonpartisan. And it turns out that the two parties are primarily financial operations right now. So was there any crisis when Jenny Arndt left the Democratic Party? No, they didn't give a shit. It's like, I didn't lose any money, so I don't care. So you can actually go around the country and get hundreds of locally elected officials to join your third party just by being cool. So that's an and you know, that could cost. I mean, I've raised millions of dollars for that too. So it's like where you work grinding away. You can see that progress. We have dozens of local elected officials. We're endorsing and running hundreds. We have ballot access in 7 states. But here's the vision that everyone thinks about, Elliott. And this is a shorthand. Now, when you think third party, maybe not you, because you guys are actually very optimistic and abundant in your mindsets. But when the average American hears third party, they think hopeless, never going to work, spoiler, and then a series of names enter their mind. And that series of names is something like Ralph Nader, Jill Stein, maybe Ross Perot if they're of a certain age, and it's a waste of time. And I'm here to tell you how we actually end up going after the big thing. So hopefully you guys are somewhat convinced that there are opportunities at the local level. At the congressional level, there are Senate candidates and congressional candidates that are neck and neck with incumbents right now. Dan Osborne, Greg Kidd, like others around the country. But the big one that everyone cares about, and I get this because I ran for president, is how the heck do you get a non-RD into the White House? And here's how you do it in real life. Check it out. Go ahead and shout out your favorite independent presidential candidate potential.
Bobby Kennedy.
RFK, sure. I'm going to throw out a Mark Cuban. I like Mark. Andrew Yang, thank you. I appreciate that. Very flattering. Oprah. Non-American, so, you know, constitutional problem. He runs into the Schwarzenegger problem. I'm going to throw in Matthew McConaughey for fun. All right, all right, all right. Man, America's going to be all right, all right, all right. I mean, it can go pretty far. All right. So imagine that set of figures running in an independent primary that everyone in America could vote on their smartphone. I like Qubit. I like Yannick. I like Oprah. Can be verified via a personalized QR code that gets sent to your mailing address. Very hard to defraud. Like beep boop, your vote has been confirmed. You could run debates. You run this nomination process, get millions of Americans participating and energized, and then the legacy parties would be left saying, no, no, no. None of that is real. What is real is waiting to hear what 6% of Iowans think in February. And then all of us would be like, wait a minute, like what these guys are doing actually matches up with the way I live my life, the way I manage my business. What you guys are doing seems like it's out of the 19th century. And by the way, the two legacy parties have no interest in what we think. You know, like they don't care about like getting our votes. They care about control. You know, again, they're primarily financial outfits at this point. So when Ross Perot ran for president in 1992, he got 19% of the vote at a time when 25% of us were independents. Today, 51% of us are independents. So what percentage could the right independent coalition get? And by the way, one of the powers of this process is that, let's say I lose, I would probably turn around and endorse Cuban or whomever, and then you end up with this freaking like squadron or like this movement of people. All of you too, even if you're like, hey, I'm an Oprah person, then Oprah doesn't emerge, you'll be like, I'm still gonna back these folks because these people have actually given me back control of my own future. These people are trying to restore American democracy. So that's a vision that can win, maybe as early as 28. What do you all think?
So first, even before we get to the particulars, I just saw the thoughtfulness that's behind that of like, what is the actual situation? How do we innovate within these seemingly intractable, rigid systems? And that's so novel to find kind of the hidden possibilities through reaching out to mayors and other nonpartisan. So in the running Global Unity, running Transformative Impact Summit, we get exposed to a lot of innovative thinkers, a lot of folks who are doing innovative work, but so often, I won't say so often, often that is people who are trying to like create whole new systems. And it's rare to find someone who's working within current systems to not only create change, but then innovate those systems with actual practical solutions. And so that's something I've always appreciated, even from the outside, even just hearing about UBI, but now hearing more about this, the Forward Party's kind of grassroots momentum building. That feels fresh. It feels new and feels like it actually inspires a sense of possibility within the what we often think, I certainly often think of as kind of a rigid system that's maybe it's too late for. And so
Well, you can tell, I think trying to combine approaches, because obviously there was something very, very fresh and new about this independent primary I'm describing. But simultaneously, you want to be pragmatic about boosting local candidates and about taking advantage of the institutions that currently exist. So I'm a both and guy, but I don't disagree with folks who are like, look, we need to build the new thing. It's just one of the struggles right now is that most people are using the old thing, but also that the old thing sometimes cannot live in harmony with the new thing. So, like you kind of have to be very, very flexible and pragmatic.
and so this is this the primary focus, this kind of Forward Party grassroots movement? Are there movement building? Are there other pieces you think can be really impactful for making change at scale?
Yeah, guys. So I've chosen a particular run at it, and what motivates me is the fact that I believe we are going to enter an AI-driven world of extremity. It's going to supercharge whatever existing inequalities there are, and it's going to compound on itself. And so here's my vision. Here's like the North Star that animates me. I think poverty is entirely addressable. You have a society that already has a GDP of 76,000 a head, and that's before AI really kicks in and supercharges GDP growth. So how does that actually benefit the average American who's living in Wisconsin or whatever? It's like right now, I'll tell you a random story where people sort of enjoy it. A few years ago, people came to me it was CNN. They came to me with a TV project called The Future of with Andrew Yang, and I would go through like the future of education, the future of healthcare. And then they did some market testing and they came back and said, hey, Andrew, bad news. People don't like the future. So, so it's like, well, shit. So how do you get people, by the way, they said they like to be fine, but they just didn't like the future. So how do you get Americans to feel like they're actually benefiting from this future that we're talking about? And I think that something like UBI is a necessary bridge, but that's not my end all be all. What you want is you want people to be living lives of structure, purpose, fulfillment, community. And we have this monetary economy to sort of assist in that. But I think the monetary economy is going to miss a lot of things. And so what my vision is an economy that rewards people for arts of creativity, for nurturing and education, for health and fitness and wellness. And one of my jokes is that at this point, we should be getting paid to go to the gym instead of vice versa. You know what I mean? Like that, like there should be these like folks whose job it is to just like make us stronger and healthier and mentally healthier and the rest of it. And a lot of those things will not get picked up in the monetary economy naturally. They won't. A lot of these human values, and the example I used on the trail was that my wife is at home with our son who's autistic, and like what value does a monetary economy give to her or attribute to her? Zero. Because like in a monetary economy, it's like, well, like that gets a zero. And we know that's perverse. I mean, that could be one of the most important things anyone does. And so if you imagine that societally, something like UBI helps get you a little of the way there, but eventually you need a multivariate economy, because if you just use capital efficiency as your measurement, we're going to kill each other. I mean, truly. If it's like those folks who don't like the future now, they're not going to like the present if you get to that point. So everything I do is try to keep that from happening, make good things happen. I believe that political change is necessary to solve some of these problems at scale. And I do think that there are massive opportunities that a lot of folks are underestimating.
I really appreciate hearing someone in your position talk about new economic systems. Many of us are working in this space. A lot of folks in the Web3 blockchain space. Global Unity has an economic system called the meaning economy that's meant to reward things that are meaningful. And I appreciate that you don't see UBI as like a catch-all for that, but a bridge to that. And yeah, I'd love to hear, with our last few minutes, I'd love to hear your vision of both what that kind of future economic system could look like. And then with your grounding in, having spent time in the trenches of the political system, of the institutions, how do we, what is your vision? And then how do we make that bridge?
Yeah, so I've been a proponent of Web3 because I think it has vast potential to help build an economy of the future and also address poverty. I don't think we've hit it yet. I don't think we figured it out. It's like a lot of what Web3 has been used for to date has fallen well short of that, and it's been primarily a means of financial speculation, and that has made me sad. But I continue to think that it's going to be a vital piece of what the future should look like. I don't think our institutions are doing well, and I also think that we should be rooting for them in various ways. It's like, even as I'm trying to build a new thing, it's like you don't want the current school to collapse. You don't want the current institutions to collapse. Like, you want you have to root for them. And so I think people in this room are in an interesting space because like you kind of see what could and should exist and you're trying to build in. And then the current institution maybe is somewhat hostile towards you. And so you look at it and be like, oh, like maybe I should return to favor. To me, I see my role as trying to speed things up. And you can go to a current institution, and sometimes it's irritating, and that they can't really get out of wherever they are. But we're going to need some of these things to help fuel our path to where we want to go. Like, we can't say, hey, we're gonna leave it all alone and do this thing. Certainly when you're talking about mass movements the way I am, because the mindset that pervades this gathering is not the norm in this country. It's not. You know what I mean? It's like it's like a particular segment of the population that I love and being a part of in respect. I see that we're going to need to try and broaden the movement to a point where the average person can see themselves in.
There's something actually really beautiful in that, and what kind of is the hallmark of this kind of community, the impact space, is supposed to be compassion, and you're applying compassion to a space that almost everyone in the space doesn't. The institutions themselves root for them, whereas we see so much wrong, and so yes, it's natural to be like, hey, that's got to stop, and kind of vilify them, both the institutions themselves and the players within them. But I think that's actually next level compassionate to, hey, they're working with what they have, and they have they didn't create the incentives they have, right? They're trying to operate from that. So that's actually a really beautifully hopeful approach to root for the institutions, root for the people. Let's see what's wrong, but let's work to improve them. And
thank you, Ali. I mean, that means a lot, because my mission really is often to try and improve people's incentives. I think our political leaders are being held captive by very, very negative and perverse incentives. And if we could change that, then they might actually get on board with some of the other things that we want. I think that this economy of the future we're talking about, what is it at heart? It's trying to reward people for doing awesome things for themselves and each other. And that is what is holding us back right now. And I said this last night. I was speaking in a very different context. But I said, like, a problem with our political system is that if you do the right thing, you're probably ending your own career. You know what I mean? And so then if we're like, oh, do the right thing, even though if you do the right thing, like, you know, you're going to be banished and we'll never hear from you again. And so then being frustrated, that's like, oh, why aren't they doing the right thing? It's like, it's because they like their jobs. They like money. They like power. And so a lot of it is trying to make it so that if you do the right thing, good things happen to you. You know, you get rewarded. And that's not true in American politics for sure, but it's not true of a lot of other walks of life. You know, it's like what people criticize these institutions out of the fact of like, oh, how could that person in that institution like allow this to happen? I mean, like we all know, I think most of us know how that happened. It's because like you're in that environment, in that tribe, in that group, and like in that incentive structure, like that is the natural thing. And that's what we have to change. That's actually a reasonable summary of my mission right now.
Love it. So right before we had Laura Stein, founder of TEDx and BOMA Global, talk about the need for a grand narrative that is shared, that we all are on board with. And, you know, maybe it's a little much for any of us to write that out, but maybe offer hints in that just, you know, what a beautiful world it would be if we had what you just said. When you do good things happen. Like that, you know, if we had an economy that was rooted in that, what a world we would have. So thank you so much for being here. I just want to, like, you know, we've had many heroes on the stage, and I define a hero as someone who's dedicated their lives and their energies and their resources to making a difference over time at scale. And, you know, you could have been very successful just staying in the entrepreneurial space and even in continuing to make the impact you did in that world, but you chose to fight what for so many of us is an impossible fight, trying to enter the system, innovate the system. I just want to applaud you for that. As I mean, this is a gathering of change makers, and I do it well. Yeah, I do. Now, really at a time. Thank you all.